And welcome to Technology Tap. I'm Professor JRod. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about the Security Plus. Security Plus is a little bit different than the other two exams that we've talked about so far. We're going to get into more detail on why it's unique. Let's get to it. All right. So I said at the beginning, we're going to talk about the Security Plus. The Security Plus is different from the Network Plus and the A Plus is that it is more definition centric than the other ones. And what do I mean by that? Well, in the other ones, I mean, you have to know like what a router is, what social engineering is, what dumpster diving. But I feel that the Security Plus has more definitions that you need to memorize. So let's go through some of the examples. One of the biggest definitions that you have to know is what is CIA. And I don't mean the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And confidentiality is defined as prevents the unauthorized disclosure of data. And integrity provides assurance that the data has not been altered by unauthorized individuals, and availability indicates that access to the data and services are not denied when needed. I think about the banking system when I think about CIA, right? They use confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? They don't give you, that you have a card and a PIN, right? Which ensures confidentiality, right? You need both to see how much money you have in the bank, just to go to the ATM and see how much money you have. And integrity, they ensure that the data has not been altered. So if I go to the bank now, and if I have $200 and I take $100 out, I'm going to get a receipt that says $100. If I come home and log into my website, it's going to, my banking website, it's going to say $100 that I have. If I go to the web application of that bank, it's going to say I have $100, right? So all of them is going to match, right? They have integrity. And availability is I can go to any ATM and for the most part take money out at any time. 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, on a Saturday, on a Sunday. Doesn't matter. I can get money out. The other big one is called DAD, D-A-D. Disclosure, the exposure of sensitive data to an unauthorized individual. This violates confidentiality. Alteration, when data is modified by an unauthorized individual. This violates integrity. And denial, the unintended disruption of access to data assets and violates availability. So they're mirrored differences or cause and effect. So you have CIA and DAD. Some other stuff that you may have on the exam is a topic called breach impact, where they talk about 5 risks. One of them is financial risk, is the risk of monetary damage to an organization. Reputational risk is the risk of negativity impact the publicity of an organization. And you know who use reputational risk a lot? Banks. If they find out that you are doing shady stuff, you are a reputational risk for the bank. They did that to, I think that My Pillow guy. Some banks canceled his account because he's, allegedly he's going around the country saying stuff. I guess they don't like it. But reputational risk, banks do that a lot. Strategic risk is the risk that is effective at limiting an organization from meeting its goals. Operational risk is a risk that slows down the business processes. And compliance risk is a risk that prevents an organization from maintaining its regulatory compliance. And that's a big, that's a big risk. You get something like FERPA, which is the umbrella under which schools fall under. It's the compliance that they follow. It's the regulatory compliance that they follow. Where you cannot tell like certain stuff, right? This is one of the reasons why a lot of schools, if you notice, move. When you call them and you have an issue with your account, they ask you for your student ID first because they don't really want to deal with Social Security unless they have to. And if you tell them, oh, I don't know my student ID, I know my Social Security number. Have you ever noticed there's a pause there? And there's a pause there because they're switching databases, right? They don't really want those, they don't really want to be using people's Social Security because there's a risk to that. But one of the things that FERPA does is grades, right? You're not allowed to, if you're in college, your parents can't call up the school and find out what grade you are unless you waive FERPA, right? You have to waive that. Even though they're paying for it, they could be paying 100% of your college. They're not allowed to call up the school and see how much, if you're passing or not. They're not allowed to do that. They have to waive that right. That if you tell them it's a FERPA violation. I even give you something even simpler with FERPA. I was a third grade substitute teacher a couple of years back, 5-6 years back. Long-term sub. So I had the same class for 3 months. And we dismissing the kids, and the grandmother comes and picks up, Johnny, right? Let's say. And the teacher goes, oh, Johnny didn't have a good day. He was out of control today, wasn't good. And the grandmother says, okay, I'll tell his mother. Principal walks over, tells the teacher, that's a FERPA violation. Right? Because grandma's not on the list. Only mom and dad are on the list. She told the teacher, that's a FERPA violation. You can get in trouble for that. So, was it really? Probably. Did she have to say that? No. Right? She's just one of these, All right. Security control categories. You have your technical controls. Technical controls use technology to reduce vulnerabilities. Examples of that are encryption, antivirus, intrusion detection systems. You have your administrative controls. Administrative controls use method mandated by organizational policy or other guidance, such as risk assessments, vulnerability assessments, pen testing, awareness training, which is huge now, change management, and contingency planning. And physical control is any controls that you can physically touch, such as lighting, signs, fences, security guards, and more. And now this. Looking to change careers? Does your kid need help in math? Want to learn how to code? If you're in the Westchester County area, then you have to go to a Red Market. A Red Market is a full-service market that offers the following: coding classes, Python, C++, Java, and HTML. Tutoring services like math, science, and English. And certification training, CompTIA A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Please go to a Red Market, that's AREN market.com, or click on the website in the show notes. A Red Market, you can change your life. All right, last thing that I want to talk about is security control types. and there is 6 of them. So the first one, and some of them overlap with security control configurations. They overlap. So one is prevented controls. You attempt to stop a security incident from occurring. Again, examples are your firewall, access control, right? Actually, maybe even yeah, I was thinking maybe security guard, but no, I don't know. Maybe. Detective controls attempt to detect events that result in a security incident. IDS, video surveillance, motion detection. Corrective controls attempt to remediate the incident that has occurred. UPS, power, uninterrupted power supply. Restoring from backups, incident response procedure. Deterrent controls attempt to discourage a threat. Guard dog, security signage, right? No trespassing. Barbed wire. I mean, those you may think signs don't work, but signs have a thing with people, where they make people think twice. No trespassing signs. You cannot enter this room. Most people see that and they're like, okay, they take that serious. So go get an alarm system. And if you have an alarm system and your neighbors see the alarm person installing it, a lot of times the neighbor will ask you for an extra sign. Why? Because they want to put it on their lawn, and it will stop that. It would make the person think twice before breaking in, right? Because if I have a sign and my neighbor has a sign, but the other neighbor doesn't have a sign, which one is the thief is going to break into? Probably the third neighbor, because he doesn't have a sign. So a sign works. Physical controls provide security controls for physical environments, right? Fences, barricades, burglar alarm, and compensating controls provide alternate controls when the primary control may not be sufficient. Separation of duties, mandatory vacations, right? When you take mandatory vacation, you have to take 2 weeks consecutive. Why? Usually within those 2 weeks, they'll notice if you've been doing any funny business at work. I worked at this one place many years ago, a restaurant and real estate company, and I used to do point of sales, which is the registers for the stores. So I went to one, I'll never forget, 33rd Street and Broadway. Went in there, had to change the menu. They had some specials coming up, and I went there, and I asked for the manager. The assistant manager came, and I'm like, "Hey, where's the manager?" And she said, "Oh, he's on vacation." I said, "Oh, okay. I need to make these changes." And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And when I'm doing those changes, she goes, "He's on vacation, but he's a really nice guy." And I'm like, "Okay." She says, "You know what he did?" I'm like, "No." He said, "Even though he's on vacation, he came back to do the inventory and the payroll for me. 2 things that I hate to do. He came to do it. And that, for me, that's a red flag. Right? Because why would he come on his vacation to do this stuff? To do the payroll, to do the inventory. Well, back then in the early 90s, let's say you worked for me and you worked early in the morning, you worked from like 7 to 11, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., and I had an assistant, and the assistant came in at 1, you would never see that assistant. You and the assistant would never meet. Well, if I fired that person and kept them on the payroll, extra 2-3 weeks, took the check and cashed the check, how would anybody know? Nobody would know. These are things that people used to do back then. They used to do stuff like that. They used to hire people and then get rid of them, keep them on the payroll as if they're still employees, and keep their check and cash it, because you can cash the check in the store. So this was back then. But this is why a lot of companies like to have mandatory 2 weeks vacation. And when you're on vacation, they're not even supposed to call you. You're not allowed to get on your email. If they do it right, you're not even supposed to be on email. They're not supposed to call you. Everything's supposed to be you. It's like you don't work there for those 2 weeks. And that's a way to check to see if there's something that you're doing behind the company's back. But that's a lot of companies don't do mandatory vacations. Where I worked, the last job I worked prior to getting into education, they never did it. I don't know if they're doing it now, but it was hard to get 2 weeks vacation to begin with. So I think they have more people now, so it's a little bit easier. But these are the things that you have to implement if you're going to be a security, security chief or chief information security officer. These are some of the things that you can implement to see if things what they're doing in your office is it's funny business. Make sure they're not doing any funny business. All right, that's gonna put a wrap on this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm working really hard to bring some surprises and more interviews. So hopefully I can push those out soon. Thanks for listening. This has been a presentation of Little Chacha Productions, art by Sarah, music by Joe Cum. If you want to reach me, you can email me at ProfessorJRod@gmail.com.